Howdy, and welcome back to You've Got People Problems, the podcast where we tackle leadership challenges that no one wants to talk about, but every business faces. I'm your host, Melissa Ortiz with Activate Human Capital Group, and this is episode 20. This week, I sat down with William Uranga, Senior Director of Talent Acquisition at Spokeo, and one of the most thoughtful people I've spoken with when it comes to hiring, people strategy, and long-term team success. William brings decades of experience in talent leadership, and what makes his perspective stand out, in my opinion, is how deeply he connects hiring to culture, not just filling seats, but building strong foundations. We got into what companies often get wrong when scaling, how to build trust when hiring between hiring managers and recruiters, and why your people strategy needs to be more than just a headcount plan. Whether you're a founder, a people leader, or someone trying to navigate hiring the right way, this one's packed with insights. Let's get to it. Give us a little bit of an intro, if you will, into the company and your role, William.
Sure. So I have been with Spokeo for now just over 7 years, which in tech seems like an age and a half, it seems, with how everything moves so quickly and people move around with organizations. But I have been in the talent acquisition side of things for good, we'll just say 20 years, kind of keep it rounded number. And so I have both been a recruiter, I've both been a leader of recruiting teams in the function, and of course also been a candidate along the way too. Like some of the famous people out there that have been users of the products, that's certainly my case as well. So have all kinds of good stories. And rather than write a book, I'd rather talk about it and share about those things here in conversation. So this is a great topic to bring up.
Great, thank you. And tell us a little bit about the company. I really enjoyed learning from you.
Yeah, so Spokeo is, let's see, we're about 19 years old. We are a bootstrapped, founder-led, privately held, and profitable company. So that's more than a trifecta.
3 cheers for that in technology.
Right. And our focus is on digital identity. How do people identify online, and how can you verify somebody is who they say they are online, and have that as a way of building trust in what is otherwise can be a very opaque, web experience. So generally, there's a couple of personas of people that use our product. We have both a product that's available to the consumer on a subscription basis, and then we're also offering variations of the product to various different industries. So there's law enforcement, there's skip tracing collections, we'll be going into real estate and also e-commerce as well. All have different use cases and factors, but basically people are either trying to get in touch with people that they've lost contact with, or they're trying to verify or validate somebody that they're interacting with that they are who they say they are. And so that has wide applications, lots of different user stories that we hear about. But we purchase our data from about 30 different vendors. It covers social media platforms, the white pages, court records, real estate records, things like that. And we do what we call linkage or entity resolution, so that you have the right William or the right Melissa with the right phone number and the right address, and it's current. That is a very hard thing to do. So a lot of not just software, but a lot of data in the sense of data science, data engineering work is done.
Data integrity, holy cow.
Yeah,
I can barely keep my email list up to date, so I have huge respect for this work.
Yeah, so keeping the data not only just accurate, but secure and safe is another issue too that you bring up. So that's very important to us as well.
Amazing. And how long have you been with the organization?
So just over 7 years, yeah.
Okay, great. Yes, you covered that. Okay, so if you haven't met me before, my name is Mel Ortiz, and I'm obsessed with helping the right people get in the right seats so that they can engage, thrive, and perform at high levels. I have been doing this work about 18 years, and it's incredibly powerful, both for the individual in the seat, but also for the organization and the internal and external customers that person serves. So I'm always looking for people with nuggets that we can share along the way, because HR is not in charge of people problems. We're in charge of preventing and solving people problems as leaders and practitioners in all of our spaces. So Let's jump right in, William. I would love to hear, as you think about before you go to recruit for a role, maybe it's a new role that the company hasn't hired before, or maybe it's a role that we need to just refresh on, hey, are these still the expectations? Because heaven knows those change over time as our businesses change.
Mhm.
What are some of your common practices to help make sure you've got everybody who's a stakeholder in that process aligned and on the same page so you're not running around like a chicken with your head cut off and trying to source candidates that meet too many criteria?
Right. Well, I think there's a couple things, but the big word that we work off of or work towards is clarity. And it starts from our standpoint, since we have the opening in the role in our organization. What do we know and what do we want to share? Part of having an opening, whether it's posting or interviewing or actively trying to source or recruit somebody, is do you understand what you're offering? And by that, it's not just the position and the to-dos and the deliverables. That is important. But what are the tools you're going to use? What are the sort of people this role interacts with and depend upon? What sort of challenges are faced that this person needs to be able to solve or sort out? And if you do that in the context, you also have the context of your company and the culture. So just because we make software, there's lots of companies out there that make software, but how we make software is different than a lot of companies. We have 6 company values. So are we sharing and are we clear when we talk about the opportunity, how our values show up in what we do? And do we present that? Because if we're clear on our side from a company and what we're offering as far as the position and opportunity, then that certainly helps people that are considering the position or referring people for a position. Is this the right role that I want to be part of? Is this the right organization and how they do things that I want to be part of? And so it helps people better select themselves in or out of consideration for that. Because there's nothing worse than, getting halfway through a conversation and you realize, well, this wasn't the direction I was trying to go in, or this is what I wasn't interested in. And you feel like you've kind of taken up a half an hour of your time, or maybe even more, and you could have been doing something else. So clarity is a big deal. So often what the recruiters do, what we do from a functional standpoint with the hiring manager, is help by asking those kind of open-ended questions of what are you looking to do with this role? And yes, it may say accountant or it may say software engineer, but why is this role so important? What is not going to get done if this position isn't filled? What does this position look like in the sense of growth? Uh, People will come in and maybe enjoy doing the job, but they're also interested in growing beyond what they've already done at prior companies or even the current job. So what does that look like? Are there other opportunities that they can add maybe some expertise in that aren't in within their immediate department or product team? So those sort of opportunities become very clear to the user when you've done your homework and you understand what you have to offer them. So for our company, could never portray ourselves here at Spokeo that we are just like Google. I mean, that you would laugh at that, at the face of that. We're
Yeah.
nowhere near like Google as far as scale, the offering of products and stuff like that. So it's not trying to be like everybody else, but being very clear on what your unique voice is that you're offering for the opportunity. So that may
So,
involve some hard discussions around the number of skills you expect a person to walk in. And so you have thoughtful conversations around, well, if we have A and B, can C be something that they learn or that we train them on? People are very drawn to those sort of things that they can learn that sort of experience. So understanding where those trade-offs are give us a clear picture of the type of person that we'd like to attract or communicate with about that opportunity.
so I'm hearing you say how critical it is for us to be clear on what we have to offer to candidates in terms of our culture, our core values, the why behind the role that will
Mhm.
help them feel their job is important and they're not just a cog in the wheel.
Yeah.
But also the basics of the role in terms of responsibilities, roles, tasks, tools, humans they'll be interacting with, technologies they'll be interacting with. How do you go about? I mean, I think certainly the culture and the values, those are pretty easy to define. Maybe not easy, but straightforward. We go through the process and then we can kind of say, okay, we check the box on that. How you mentioned open-ended questions, so the recruiters are really getting the information. Is there a process they go through? How does it get documented and kind of blessed? What does that look like, William?
Well,
In your
that's going to vary from organization to organization. In ours, I can say we have what we call a kickoff meeting. So when somebody has headcount for the position, the recruiter meets with them. It has a we have structured some initial set of questions to say, what are we looking for? Here's what a job description looks like. And if we need to edit it from the last time or create a new one, sometimes a recruiter will go off and come up with some sample descriptions saying, not just job descriptions, but also profiles that look more like this person or that person, because that really helps
Oh, I like
the
that.
hiring manager visualize saying, I need more of this, or, oh, I hadn't thought that that degree was relevant, but that's good. So to get them thinking about, because admittedly, a hiring manager, unless they're constantly hiring, this isn't something that they always spend time doing. And yet, they live with their decision for good or for bad for the rest of that experience that that hire makes as part of the team from there. So, this is also a very telling time for the hiring manager. Can they make a good decision like a human resource in that role and make a
Yeah.
good call and develop them? So we're there to help them make that good decision. And sometimes it's uncovering, sometimes it's a discussion, but it usually is one or two meetings. Depends upon how much needs to be uncovered or thought about. Sometimes these new positions, because they touch other teams, require that hiring manager to go talk to those other teams saying, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And they work with your team. So, what are your interests in this? It's not to, we're not trying to look for a total unicorn, because then it becomes a little bit of a Franken
Wild
candidate in
goose
a
chase.
sense, but it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And you don't know what you're looking for, but everybody has a different view of it, right? So it still needs to be the hiring manager's responsibility, but having those conversations means that when they include other people in the interview process, they're aligned. And the first relationship that needs to be really aligned is that hiring manager and the recruiter. Do I understand as a recruiter what the hiring manager needs? The hiring manager in our environment sets the target, sets the bar of what we're looking for to hire against. And so the recruiter's responsibility to amass different tools, resources, and efforts that will find the right person and then have them part of the vetting process that ultimately will prove that they're the right person that meets
Yeah.
that role. So it could be a couple meetings that takes place. Sometimes there's some research and market research that goes into what's the comp range, what's the are they even located here in, I don't know, California, it could be New Jersey, who knows? And you have those sort of conversations that may seem ancillary. We just need somebody to actually getting more specific as to where are they and where can we find them. So it includes all kinds of questions and discussions like that.
It sounds like they're really operating as internal consultants to the business and to that hiring manager so that they're gathering all this data and then coming back with some recommendations of, okay, here's what I'm going to do, coming up with this ideal candidate target.
Mhm.
That then the hiring manager can say, yeah, if you found me five of those, or if you found this person who sounds exactly like this person that's a really high performer on my team, that's the one I want to clone. And
Right.
okay.
So that's helping the hiring manager be successful from the get-go, because there's nothing worse to have a candidate in the final interview stage and you have your what we call a debrief discussion, and people say, we really don't want that person after all of that effort of interviewing and vetting them and maybe a take-home exercise or something like that, and then you end up saying no, that can't happen, but we really want to minimize that effort. So the more effort and time you put into the upfront discussion and decisions, the better the experience and the more clear you can be in your recruiting process, both not only internally but also with candidates and what you communicate out.
And the sad truth that I find in this process, and you can tell me if you see this as well with the hiring managers you've worked with in your careers, is once I have some scar tissue as a hiring manager, I tend to take that process up front way more seriously because I know what it looks like to get someone who wasn't quite a fit and I'm trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. I'm trying hard and they're trying hard and the fit just wasn't there from the get-go.
That's a good point. We can either sometimes having medals in the front look really good, but if you have some metal in the back that you've taken those arrows or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
sometimes you can learn a lot. Now, you can become gun shy in the sense of I'm too afraid to make a decision
Yes.
and not move forward. So there's some paralysis analysis that can happen, but hopefully we don't go that direction either. So there's nothing like actual experience to I guess reinforce what you're saying. That's true, but we try not to make it too scarring, I guess, of an experience. And so giving them options, saying, you could do that, but we've seen that not work as well in our environment because of X, Y, and Z, or maybe run a little experiment. So yeah, again, the consulting approach. And then once you have that relationship with the hiring manager, and we launch the initial efforts to start encouraging people to be applied or referred in or sourced, then we also meet with the interview team and look, and we call that a calibration meeting in which what the work that we've done with the hiring manager, we're now sharing with the interview team so they're on board, because they can also, if they have different ideas of what the position is, totally derail the process because somebody has the wrong idea about the role and they're interviewing a good person in for the wrong things in that sense. So that's what a calibration meeting goes on. It takes place at a little bit later date once the search is started.
I want to go back. You said you talked about analysis paralysis, and I do
Mhm.
think for people who have had scar tissue hiring the wrong person in the past, it's human nature to be nervous about making similar mistakes again. Do you have any tools that you use, pre-hire assessments or skill tests that help give some confidence to the hiring manager that, like, wow, this person has the aptitude or the skill or both um, to take this role on, or is that still more, are we leaning on their resumes, reference checks, and the interview process at Spokeo?
No, there's opportunities, and we do this. You can either have engage with, say, a third party platform that specializes in that sort of assessment or test and having the candidate go there and deal with that scenario question. Or you can actually develop a in-person, and by in-person, I mean in video interview scenario in which they can demonstrate this skill or knowledge, or you can set up a take home
Mm-hmm.
to do that
Or
as
all of
well.
the above.
Or all the above. Well, true. We try to limit it in the sense that we want to keep the conversation moving, and you want to make sure that if you're trying to measure something, that it is either going to accomplish a couple things. So if it's a take-home project, can they present and can they address or solve the problem? So you try to accomplish more than just one thing, but usually it's some core skill that there's just no way there's no substitute for them actually doing it to demonstrate they can do it. Now you have to think about, okay, what's the scenario? What are the parameters? How long are we going to ask them to or give them to complete it? Do we want them to use resources? And if so, what does that look like? Um, in some cases, we always try to make sure the work is something of a known issue or challenge that we've addressed or worked on in the past, as opposed to trying to get free work from somebody doing original work for us. And if that's the case, then we take a compensation route for that. We'll pay you for the number of hours you put in towards this product design, for example, or something like that. So
Sure.
you need to think about what it is, but you don't want to have this every step of the way. Otherwise, this could be like a month or two of interviewing that the candidate's just this is just a bit much for me, and I don't have that kind of
It
time. I got a full-time job, by the way,
And oh, by the way, I got another job while you are hemming and hawing.
and that's usually what happens. Yes. So
Yeah.
so you want to think about the time, you want to think about the message, you also want to think about how close is this, not to just only the work being done, but does it reflect the type of work that we're doing here? And do they understand that I'm not asking them just to jump through a hoop and prove they can do it, but how this is core to this role and how it impacts the nature of the work? And if they understand that, they feel like I'm learning something more about the company because of the scenario. I get to actually demonstrate unfettered about how I can do address the problem, solve the problem, and present it. And people usually relish that, particularly for actually at
Technical
all
roles.
stages of a career. People appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. I am curious if we go back to as we think about setting that clarity. You talked about clarity was the first stage. How do you communicate all of that information to a candidate? What we gathered it internally, we've gotten clear together. How do we communicate that without taking tons of a recruiter's time to translate this information, or is that just the nature of the beast?
No, that's a great question. We're just holding a candidate's attention, a possible applicant's attention is difficult enough as it is. So the questions we ask ourselves are, well, where does this sort of person typically go? I mean, not just physically, but online and so forth. What are they
Yeah, yeah.
interested in? And if you know that, then you can kind of insert yourself into that location, say, hey, had you ever thought about the work that we do here and that we might be a great opportunity for you to do your next greatest work there? So there's little things, little what do you call it, breadcrumbs, I guess,
Yeah.
or small hooks. And there, it's more about, do you know what appeals to them? And if it's an engineer, the bigger, the hairier, the challenge that you can present to them to solve, that usually just kind of sucks them in a little bit. But then they
Especially if
want to
they're the right
know,
candidate.
are you going to give me the straw and mortar to make my own bricks, or do I have to go find that stuff? Or are you going to give me stuff that you used 10 years ago and expect me to make polished? That I don't go for that. What's the latest? What tools are you giving? So that's stuff that is probably more appropriate to have on your website already, as
Okay.
opposed to stuffed into the job description. Now, so it depends on where you go. If I'm going to a Ruby on Rails meetup group or online group, I don't need to go into the whole lot bunch about Ruby on Rails. They know it, they get it, and they're probably the only question is, are you using the latest version or not?
Yeah.
But they might care about the other things. So you think about what that audience is that you're trying to attract your preferred or ideal candidate from. What's the information that will resonate with them? And then go do that. I'm reminded years ago, and this dates me a little bit, but when Cisco was really on a tear of growth, guess where they went? They went to the home improvement expos back when those were a real big thing. Why? Because everybody was spending their stock options on improving their home and their backyard and stuff. So isn't always clear to go where people are just because it says I'm looking for engineer, therefore I'm looking for, particular software. I mean, that's a great option, but think creatively as to where people spend their time and so forth. So some organizations, some places cater to startups. Some organizations and places cater to location. In other words, they're more West Coast versus central or what have you. And then some are more engineering focused versus product management or what have you. So you just need to think about and be able to adapt to that. Just as the individual thinks about their resume per company, I should probably tweak it so it addresses that company's interest in me as an individual. We need to be doing the same thing as trying to attract candidates to our roles as to what might attract them and speak to that very, very clearly.
I love that. I love that. I also want to go, I'm just like going back, all these little nuggets that I heard from you.
Sure.
You said sometimes we take on a third party to help us assess these candidates in ways to get more information before we make a decision.
Right.
Have you had any wins or conversely horror stories or both about when those have really benefited the decision? Do you feel neutral about them? What's your sentiment when we do take on that extra step?
Yeah. So having third party options do a couple things. One, typically they go deeper in that area than I've had a chance to.
Hmm.
And they've developed a library of questions that I haven't done, or they're able to synthesize it within 20 minutes of somebody taking it versus I gotta look at this and I kind of get blurry-eyed. It takes me half a day to read it and assess it. So there's all kinds of advantages, and it depends what you're expecting from them and the sort of volume that you might put through that solution or tool. Does it make financial sense? Am I going to get value from that? And that's a discussion, between you and your finance person or accounting person to do so. But I've seen it work both ways. You can do this everything from a hard skill, accounting or spreadsheets or SQL or coding, or it could be more personality. And it depends on what the crucial item is that you're trying to solve for. Those are all
Yeah.
important, but depending on the organization, one could be more important than the other. Often these places will also allow you to maybe develop your own scenario, which can be good. You just need to be really good at developing those questions on that sort
Yeah.
of platform. For example, we have found that it's much easier on software to just use a third party's solution, that platform, and send the candidate there to do an assessment than us to write the solution and put it on the platform, because there's lots of edge cases and clarification that a machine's going to automatically score that my engineers just haven't had the time and breadth of experience doing. And it's different
Yeah.
when you interview somebody with that question live over video versus when you have it set up. You got to think of everything before you put it on that platform. So it's just, in many cases, if you don't have that kind of resource, it's just easier to pull from their library of questions. Now, there are some things that come up now these days is dealing with people that shall we say, get creative with how they answer questions and solve problems by using external resources and stuff that they shouldn't be doing. That's something not to ignore, but to think through. A lot of these platforms have taken on that challenge and have come up with ways to identify if there's undue pauses in code writing, if the code that is written looks a lot like what's out there on the internet and is essentially plagiarized, and things like that that help, but nothing is perfect. Yeah, it's always kind of a cat and mouse game of playing catch up with one side, being unduly creative in a negative way that needs to be countered
Yes.
with the how do you say it, with the guidelines and expectations of the test or assignment giver.
Sure. Sure. So you talked a little bit about some of these assessments can be time savers for your recruitment team. Like if I'm looking at 400 resumes versus only four, it's a big difference. And
Right.
then if I'm doing some intake meetings, what are you seeing in terms of candidate flow today? I was just looking on LinkedIn. There are quite a few open roles at Spokeo. Are you seeing 40 candidates? Are you seeing 4,000? What? Give me a
Yeah.
volume estimate.
Thanks to AI, and the ability that different agents can help an applicant, people are applying faster and more frequently than ever before. So the importance for catching possible duplicates, probably unintended, but duplicates never the same, becomes important. And also checking to make sure that it isn't a bot answering your application questions on behalf of the candidate. And using that as a screening purpose becomes super important. So asking for the basic information is something that everybody does if you want to get back in touch with the applicant. But we also ask something that's germane to the role, and usually try not to have it be a yes or no or multiple choice, because you
Sure.
can play the odds that way. But something that will indicate they have a little bit deeper knowledge that would be in line with this level of a role that they've applied for. And the people that take the time to write that out or answer it usually are the ones where okay, this couldn't have been a bot, because otherwise it would have sounded a little too professorial or too academic or
Yeah.
just like Wikipedia or something like that. And those become the ones that we do. Some don't even answer the questions, in which we just move on from there and so forth. So
That's a great sorting mechanism.
you're right. The key thing is to get to the right, I must say, 20% that apply. And if you get a position, I've seen 300 or 400 come in a day. That's a lot to go through. And then if you're able to automate that in the sense of, if they give an answer within a certain range of acceptable answer, let's move them on. The rest will say thank you, but no thank you. Then you're not spending time reading through what are going to be no's, and you can focus on the ones that are certainly possible yeses to move forward. So it's getting to that right amount more quickly that becomes something you don't feel like your soul is being sucked out of you as the afternoon wanes on, with all the applications that are going on, and you can help the hiring manager get much more quickly to the people they should be talking with. Of course, the key question is, like, do you give your take home or assignment or third party resource tool assigned to people right when they apply, or after you do a recruiter screen, or maybe it's after the hiring manager? All of those are possible options, but that affects the cost as far as how many people you're putting through the platform, and at
Okay.
what point do you want to really weed out people for that skill set. So that's also something to think about and talk about with the hiring manager as well.
I actually am curious about going deeper into that conversation. Do you
Okay.
have a philosophy? Say cost was equal to Spokeo. If you had the opportunity to put some of those assessments ahead of time versus post conversation and you've done some filtering, what benefits the company most in terms of where you place that in the progression?
It'll be the one where I get the strongest signal and spend the best amount of time with the candidates, the right candidates. And so
Okay.
what you look for, to answer your question, is you go back and look at the conversion ratios. So how many applied versus how many made it to the recruiter screen, and how many made it out of the recruiter screen then to the assessment or to the hiring manager. And you can run little mini experiments. Okay, we'll try the assessment beforehand and see what happens. So generally, I would say recruiters would love to have the assessment done before time so that I'm not wasting, or I feel like I'm not wasting my time with the wrong people when I sit down. We usually take anywhere from at least 30 minutes to 45 minutes per candidate to talk with them. We're
And
talking
that's not just the time you take, but then you also have to, I hear horror stories all the time from recruiters who are like, well, I scheduled this candidate and then I rescheduled this candidate and then this candidate flaked and I've spent all this time in the scheduling just to get to the interview. Then there's usually a little bit of follow-up work if it goes well.
right. So there's
So
tools for that too. So one of the things we did recently is we switched out our vendor for our applicant tracking system for one that allowed us to do more automatic scheduling. I
great.
used to have we used to have a coordinator, an awesome coordinator, in which I was very sad to have I lost her last year. But what we did is, with the new tool that we got, we're able to, with the click of a button, send an invitation out to a candidate, and they can pick the time and date that they want, rather than giving me options. And I gotta say, well, I can't do any of those. How about stopping
So
this
now
back
it's six
and forth?
emails deep.
And
Yeah.
so it makes I all agree with you. Rescheduling is not as fun, but it's a lot easier now saying, okay, I'll just hit a new link and resend it to you. But I can now do that not only for the recruiter, I can do it for the hiring manager, and I can do it for the most part all the way down the line, making it much faster to get back to the candidate, which they appreciate because they think we love them, and we do if we're showing that kind of interest. So we keep trying to save time, to your point earlier, and with tools like that helps.
Great. Okay, we've covered so much ground. I want to go, this has all been pre-hire discussion.
Yep.
I want to talk about, recruiter, consultant internally and hiring manager have come down to a couple core candidates. We've selected one person. How does your team support the internal onboarding to make sure, in the clarity session, we defined what tools they'll be working with, what people, how they'll be working with deliverable and tasks. Does the talent acquisition team support the onboarding process at all? Or is it like, we got your person, good luck hiring manager, you got this. High five.
No, so the answer is no. Who does it will shift a little bit. We do hand over the new hire to our HR colleague that deals with the onboarding documentations and background checks and typical steps that you would
Yeah.
expect in join an organization. We've also set up a document and a calendaring event for the hiring manager, that when the person's going to start, and that when they pick them up virtually, so to speak, from the orientation that usually takes place in the first half of the day, and that's
Okay.
owned and run by HR, our people operations for that. They learn a lot about the company. They see different people from different parts of the organization, And then usually it's around 1 o'clock, then their hiring manager picks them up, and then they start their how do we say it, a detailed orientation with regards to the role and the function and so
Yeah.
forth.
Not just sort of onboarding to the company, but now I'm onboarding you to your role. We're laying out your
Right.
first 90 days probably. And
Setting goals, and we should mirror what's going on in the job description and things like that, different
right.
measurables and tools and what have you. So we give them plenty of time. We certainly are available to talk with them about it. But we don't have a one size fits all, because it does vary from function to function what that looks like. Sometimes for engineering, it's you can learn everything in a week. Now, being productive, that may take a little bit longer, versus cross-functional roles such as like product management, where you've got to meet a whole bunch of different people that you work with, and proverbially herd cats to get a product out the door and working well. That just takes a little bit different approach, by way of example.
Okay. Um, well, that's pretty straightforward and beneficial. Like there's a pretty good handoff. I assume we have to work with the hiring manager to block off that 1 p.m. and later to really give that time. Because if I've got meetings or I'm out for a conference, now I'm a new candidate or I guess a new employee and I'm onboarded, but
Right.
crickets.
Yes. Congratulations on getting the candidate, but you can't be gone on vacation at this time. This is not the time to celebrate that. You need to onboard this person because, people that have applied for the role had a certain level of confidence that they could do this, and that's part of the vetting process too. Do we think they can do it, and will we be there excited and encouraging them to do it? There's nothing will send things south faster than having an absent hiring manager that is not there on the first day, or things are not set up correctly to say, um, we don't have this together. That will just send people and say, I made the wrong decision, and probably be on the lookout to either head back or go somewhere else. And
Yeah.
that's not good. After I think about all that time that you spent recruiting, vetting, engaging talent, to have that to lose that opportunity, that's something that nobody should have to experience. But it does take some preparation, as you said.
Yeah. Amazing. Anything else as we go back to our original topic, William, and we think about laying the groundwork for great recruitment, selection, and onboarding? Is there anything else in your experience that the world could learn from the way your work has evolved and the way you're leading this charge today?
I'll hop over a couple of different things. One, on the recruiter front, no matter what size of team you run with, to make sure that your recruiters understand not just what they're recruiting, but the organization and the culture and the business that role operates in. I think there's two awesome compliments I can hear about a recruiter from the candidate, and one is, well, I thought the recruiter was the hiring manager. They were that well versed in the technology I was using, the culture of I don't know, Scrum and Agile principles, and they knew the company's finances and could talk about concerns I'd read on, I don't know, Glassdoor or things like that. My goodness, to have a recruiter that prepared is awesome. It makes the hiring manager very proud to be working with, partnering with somebody like that. And I'm just tickled pink to have somebody representing the organization like that. I think on the other side, to also have them constantly reaching out. Yes, it's wonderful to have people that apply and have people referred in, but part of dealing with reality is not everybody knows about this particular opportunity. And if you're not out there introducing yourself to people that could be a fit, they just didn't know that there was an opportunity out there, then that's a shame, a missed opportunity as well. So to make sure recruiters are out there meeting people proactively, is something else I would suggest. Two, a second area would be the referral program. That is a no-brainer to have up and running, and on a regular basis, a reminder that exists. Sometimes there needs to be special things announced or special events to draw attention to it. But if you're not leveraging people already in your company that already understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and who would probably best fit in there, that's a big missed opportunity to do that. And I also think it indicates kind of the health of the healthiness or health level of health of the culture as well. People are not going to refer their best friends and people they've known over the years to something that's a complete, we'll say, mess of a situation, right?
Even for $500 or whatever our
Even for
referral fee is.
500, even for $5,000,
Yeah.
it just ain't worth it to me. I'd rather, they shows that they value the friendship or relationship a little bit more. So be working on that. If there's something, and I'm not saying that anybody and everybody's out there perfect, but be working on it and be talking about what you are working on. That sometimes goes a little bit beyond talent acquisition, but we do care about it with HR and with the hiring managers. And then the one other
Wait, I'm
item.
going to pause you on this one before you go to the last
Oh
one.
yeah, please.
Um, Talk to me a little bit about your referral program. They vary so widely across industries and companies. At Spokeo, what does it look like if I'm an employee and I want to refer you, my great friend, in to be a role that I think you'd be a really good fit and you've got the experience for? How do you structure that for current employees and what are those benefits look like?
So it all depends on what kind of budget you have to do it. I would rather pay. I think the general consensus is most companies would rather pay the employee for referral than pay a recruiting agency 4, 5x for
Yeah.
that, and don't reap as much a reward as the referral. So how you communicate that, is it easy to discover, is it easy to understand? At Spokeo, we focus on generally the difficulty of the position.
Hmm.
So the more difficult the position is, or the more senior it is, the more sign-on bonus, or yeah, it is not a sign-on bonus.
Referral
It's
bonus.
it's a bonus. It's a separate bonus that's given. But we do have parameters around it. You need to be an employee of the company when the bonus pays out. The bonus is paid out after the person who starts is with the company for at least 90 days. And so there's
Okay.
certain things that will vary from company to company. I know some companies that really kind of ramp it up by saying, just by putting a name in, if it meets certain qualification, will give you a ticket that you can win something in a drawing. So it depends on what sort of attraction and what sort of behavior you're trying to encourage. Now,
Motivate. Okay.
you don't want the employees spending all day putting names in a hat, because that kind of defeats
They actually have work to do.
yeah, go figure. Um, but so there's a balance of that. But doing that and having it visible at, say, internal communication or all hands company meetings and stuff like that is just a great way to use an audience that you have fairly good access to. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time. I usually take notes on what I think some of the really valuable takeaways are. So I'm going to roll through those and you tell me if I missed or misconstrued anything, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, so here are my notes. Clarity counts. Get aligned internally about roles, responsibilities, tools, culture, and internal collaborators you get to work with. Another one is consider tools to save time and money. Everything from automated calendar tools to assessments that can identify aptitude misfits, behavioral, cognitive misfits, or even just skill-based misfits.
Mhm.
Check out, make sure your recruiters understand the importance of the role, why it exists, the company and the culture, and what the demands are of the role so they can offer a realistic preview and we're not getting a misalignment of expectations there. And then my last one was don't underestimate the referral process of referring. And current employees who viscerally know the culture have probably talked about it with their friends and family and their ability to sniff out prospective employees. Is that
Yes, I would agree. And if you're going to have that referral program, you better be ready to follow up and give some visibility of people that refer people into, because they don't want
and
to go to the
celebrate them,
4th of
hopefully.
July party and see that person referred in, and then they get asked, "Hey, what happened to?" And they don't know. That's awkward. So you need to be able to provide some sort of communication back about what did happen, why it did work out or why it didn't work out if they didn't know, because not everybody knows what's going on in all quarters of the company. So some good communication would be helpful. And
It's
then I
not
think
just about the bonus, it's about what happens so I can continually increase my effectiveness in giving referrals.
yes, actually, people care more about that level of transparency and communication than even the bonus. I've
Makes
seen some
sense.
referral programs where, hey, we'll make a donation to this not-for-profit, and people really get excited about it. So it's not always about the money for me, but
Yeah.
it's certainly they do care about the relationships if they're referring people in like that. Yeah.
As their referral person expects them to know what the heck. I thought the interview went really well. And
There is an assumption, and it's not far-fetched that, hey, you work at some company, you should know something. They would
yeah,
think, but that could just raise other red flags if they don't know.
yeah,
Awkward moment of silence there. Um,
cool.
the only thing I might add is, speaking of reputation, is if nobody else at the company has taken note of the reputation, certainly talent acquisition should lead the effort to be engaged on the reputation websites. Now I know there's some companies that communicate, in investor
And by
relations,
that, William, I assume you mean Glassdoor. Where else should they be looking for?
comparison. There's some others that offer insights into companies, and even Indeed partners with Glassdoor to get some of that feedback. But if you just have people that put up negative either interview or work experience, people know that it may not be true. But if you're not responding, and I don't mean being defensive or aggressive and trying to take them back out, but just thoughtful about what the real picture is, what you are doing, and thanking them for taking time to give input, because that shows what people care about more is engagement. And if you're posting even on Glassdoor, even though you're muttering under your breath that you don't like it, at least if you're engaged, people appreciate that a lot more. It shows that you care about what people think and what their experiences are. So again, if it isn't being addressed somewhere else in the company, talent acquisition should certainly, uh, step up and lead that sort of response. There's different ways to do that, but the point is be engaged.
Great. Well, I'm so appreciative of your time and insights today. If people want to get a hold of you, William, what would be your preferred way? Is it LinkedIn, email? What would you like to
Yeah,
see?
I'd say LinkedIn would be the best way. Always happy to
Okay.
chat with folks that way, or in mail is what it's called. Sorry, I had to think about that for a moment. Happy to do that. Happy to suggest resources and network, and I find that's been the most helpful with people. Plus, typically those people have a profile, so I get to know who they are as well as they get to know who I am too.
Right. Right. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to future interactions.
It's been fun. It's been great. Thank you so much for your time and for your questions too.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode of You've Got People Problems. If you got something out of the conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with the other leaders in your network, because let's face it, we all have people problems. You can watch full episodes on YouTube or listen on your favorite podcast app. But either way, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.